Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking profiling. You hear the term profiling all the time, and we all do it. We do it every day. We do it all the time during the day, profiling. For some reason, though, it's become a tabooed word, a bad word to say, and Attorney Extraordinary Benton Ross Watson's going to break it all down for us and tell us what's going on.
Well, to say that the profiling is a bad thing and looked down upon, I think is incorrect. Every day, people make profiles. I think when you ask what is a profile, it's nothing more than a set of data, a set of criteria that we use to make some kind of determination, interpretation, or prediction about a given circumstance or set of events. And I mean, that's basically a decision. A decision, I mean, I'm not quoting the Webster's dictionary or anything, but I would say a decision is our choice, a cognitive selection of a certain path based on a given set of events, based on past schema or memories from past events, past circumstances, experiences that we've had. We make predictions about our future courses of action based on our experiences. And so really that is all a profile is. Okay, you have a whole sector of criminology that makes profiles on all kinds of different theories, like event-based theories, place-based theories, pattern theory, opportunity theory, flag theory, boost theory, risk terrain modeling, near report. I mean, these are just the tip of the iceberg. Near repeat theory, by the way, is probably some of you have noticed this. When a robbery occurs, there's often maybe a string of robberies after it, or let's say like when a riot occurs, a string, right, of crimes will occur right just after that riot. But there's actually more specific than that, and you can get down to the percentages. You can go read the child maltreatment manuals, and they've got this down almost. They can tell you how many abuse cases they're going to have every year, how many neglect calls they're going to have, and what percentage of those calls are going to play out, are going to be found evidence of it, and going to be found no evidence of it. And it's shocking how close the percentages are every year, but percentages are manipulable. Okay, so you can manipulate your statistics and your numbers to get a certain set of results that you want, and I think that's what a lot of advocates who are against profiling greatly fear, and it gives law enforcement the ability to say, well, he fit into these percentages, so that allowed us to jump in and violate his rights, even him or her rights, even if they have nothing that they view that's verifiable that to act on other than those percentages. And I think in my experience, I think that is definitely more true in the CPS cases, which I don't do really that much anymore, the CPS cases, than it is in criminal cases. In most criminal cases, your police officer are going to have some kind of verifiable evidence that they see themselves, okay, that they are able to see in plain view. It may not be criminal in and of itself what they see, but it may corroborate those other profile aspects or those tips that they've gotten from other people. Also, you've got to realize we talked about the Terry stop, the Terry case, Terry versus Ohio, when we spoke with Mr. Grisham at the gun show last year. We talked about that's where our reasonable suspicion analysis came from. Terry was just Officer McFadden was an officer working the beat in downtown and sees these guys circle a building and then go back and then talk to a guy on the corner and then go back and circle a building again and then stand on the corner, and then another guy runs over, they talk to him, and then they run back over and talk to the guy on the corner, and they come back and circle it. This was a profile case for casing a joint. They're looking to rob it.
Okay, all right. But wouldn't you technically term it suspicious activity, which I guess is a
profile of the activity, the certain events.
Right.
All Officer McFadden did was look at those events and look at those people and say, do they fit the criteria that I'm used to in my experience and training?
There's no way you can get away from the word profiling, because everything you say, it's suspicious activity has its certain characteristics. So when you see that, it's been profiled. So no matter what you do in life, you're profiling.
Yeah. I would say there's some truth to that statement. I mean, profiling is looking to more make interpretations and predictions, right?
It's almost like you can't do anything without profiling. I mean, you have to look at circumstances to make a decision.
A profiling is a list of criteria, is a list of data.
And that's
okay,
it.
and that's it.
You know, it's when you're adding things like profiling based on a person's appearance in order to, I don't know, circumvent the
right.
regular.
But as we know, some things that we list can be arbitrary. Some things that we list can be very ambiguous. Some things by themselves give us no foundation really to say that this person is criminal. I mean, there's all kinds of people that are big and burly and have tattoos and are scary looking. That they could be the nicest person in the world. Okay, and so to say that just the physical appearance characteristics, I think those are the most dangerous, because those give rise, and that goes into racial profiling. That's what some of the racial profiling mess is all about, which I'm going to talk about if we have time. But it's more so, I think, if officers and the government and the statistics and things like that stick with the activity, okay, there's going to be less chance of there being a dangerous risk. But even then, you have profiling that is dangerous, and I'm going to talk about a few of those right now. So, I do want to point out, like, on the statistics I was saying, in Seattle, they did a study. Half of the crime over a 14-year period could be isolated to 4.5% of city streets. Okay, and in Minneapolis, Minnesota, there was another study that in 3.3% of street addresses and intersections generated over 50% of all dispatched police calls. Okay, and then in Boston, only 8% of street segments accounted for 66% of all street robberies over a 28-year period. Now, I mean, that's shocking how narrow they can pinpoint it down. But there are some lawyers and advocates that would argue, but you don't know that that's accurate, because those are based on other environmental circumstances. Like, for instance, this is probably not the case, but this is just a simplistic example. Maybe only those people have phones in that area. Maybe the rest of the town doesn't have phones. And like I said, it's a simplistic view, but I'm just trying to give an example. Maybe more people tend to call in that area for some other reason. Or maybe only crime gets caught in that area because it's more populated. Okay, maybe there's all kinds of reasons why you might have that percentage, account for all the calls, and it's not necessarily that crimes not occurring elsewhere. It could be occurring elsewhere in the same percentages and just not getting reported. And so those are the things you have to worry about. Is the foundation of the statistics valid? But then you have cases like the FBI's UTF when we caught Ted Kaczynski. Okay, a lot of how we caught the Unabomber was based on the profiling. Yes, David Kaczynski, his brother, played a big part, but when they combined, a lot of people said, even after his brother David got involved, that they don't think it's Ted. Well, they used profilers and linguistic analysts to combine those two and figure out that in fact he was the Unabomber. And you have other cases, several cases. I mean, there's just there's numerous amounts of cases about drug courier profiles. Okay, and how good a job that the FBI and ATF and everything else does about protecting us based on drug courier profiles. And as well, you have, I would say, quasi-racial, profiling, which is appropriate in some circumstances. I know there are some people out there that it's never appropriate, but one of those times, and it's a touchy subject, but it's border control. It's border control, border security. Okay, and so that is only one little bitty aspect, though. I mean, they're looking at your vehicle. They're looking is there black tint, like blacked out windows? Is the vehicle heavily occupied? Is there two vehicles involved? A lot of times these coyotes have two different people, and oftentimes there'll be three. There'll be a one or two watch out vehicles, and there'll be one or two vehicles to stray police off to kind of as a diversion, so to speak, to get police off their trail. And the police have gotten smart. Now they're actually looking for the diverting vehicles. Okay, and so then you're looking, is it overly weighted? Is it weighted down to show that there's a lot of people in there? Does this vehicle really match up? Do they know the vehicle? Is it a local? Is it somebody that they know? And then, yes, at some point, obviously the characteristics of the passengers are going to come into play, and that's when race does play some sort of factor. And so you may not agree with immigration policy. You may not agree with our stance on how we enforce the immigration policy. But I think those advocates who make their argument from the standpoint of the race card, so to speak, from the racial standpoint, right, weaken their argument, because when the whole investigation is based and directed at the very ethical aspect, are you of ethical
It's just one aspect.
origin?
It's one,
Okay, I think the better argument is to come from, right, since there are legitimate reasons why immigration is not legitimate in this aspect, and then maybe use the race concern, the race criteria, right, as a way to establish credibility or as a way to establish emphasis. Okay, but I do think that sometimes it's appropriate, but a lot of times it's not. I think to say, especially in drug courier profile, I know that it's done, and I probably don't think that race should play a role in that. But obviously, if you're thinking that you're going to have a big time smuggling coming in from Cuba or Colombia, obviously the fact that the person's Cuban or Colombian may make some sort of a difference. But that doesn't necessarily true though, because you would think they're smarter than that, and they're going to use somebody that looks like a preppy white guy from Texas A&M, okay, that's going to get them to do their drug couriering for them. So it's hard to say whether they're accurate or not. And then over time, as social fashions change, how do you know that the profile has been updated? How do you know that things are still current? And how do you know that the person making the profile is current on what's going on? And that's probably, we have to accredit the FBI and things like that for getting good personnel in there that are new personnel that know what they're doing. I think you get into terrorists, there's obviously, we don't really need to get into all of it, but when you talk about race, there's obviously probably going to play some factor, but then you have
nowadays you never know, man.
Yeah.
Anybody. That's what I was going to say. How many times have we seen? And it was the guy who went off in the theater. It was a crazy white guy with red
normally
hair.
you normally get this impression because of where we've been and who we've been fighting, that it's going to be dark skin, dark hair, foreign speaking language. But now you're getting homegrowns, American, red, white, and blue, pale
School
skin.
shootings.
Yep.
Oklahoma City, stuff like that.
So
Right, and I read at least 2 articles where I read that Timothy McVeigh, the FBI was thrown off course because they were assuming that it was an Arabic individual, when in fact it was 2 white guys.
You're talking complex profiling here. You got anything in those notes of yours about just being on the street and how it affects us in a daily, the person, the individual here in a town, in a part of town, whether they're black, white, driving a certain low rider, gold trim, silver trim, pants down below your.
I mean, there's absolutely no way for me to give you an example of that, because it's one thing that I actually disagree with the system. I know that I think you promote profiling, right? And I don't necessarily condemn profiling, like I said, because it has to be done. There's no getting around it. But
I didn't say I promoted profiling. I said it's something you can't get around. We all do it. There's just no way around it.
In my opinion, I feel like the courts have gotten. Let's talk about drug courier profile. So, a lot of people don't know this. It didn't make the news a lot. It didn't really get out there. It wasn't something. I mean, it made the news, but it really wasn't a big major issue. There were several counties in Texas that used the forfeiture statute, and the forfeiture statute allows the police officers to come in, and that allows the county, the sheriffs, the commissioners, all the county government to come in, seize your property, okay, and take your property and then sell it and make money off of it if they feel like you were using that property, or if you earned that property, gained that property through the use of illegal activity. And most of the time, this is through drugs. And so there were all these counties that weren't charging people with any crime, but they were stopping them. There would be out of county people coming in, driving through town late at night, and they'd have a bunch of cash. And the government would say, well, they meet this profile. They're on a drug highway. They're late at night.
That's a great example of what we're talking about here, because I know what you're talking about. They're totally innocent people, but because they got profiled, they're immediately guilty.
Right, and it's a preponderance of the evidence standard, because it's a civil case. For you guys that don't know, that just means the government just has to show more likely than not. And I'm sorry, but when you're going in front of a judge and you're an out of county defendant and you're not from there, you have no weight, and they're looking at a prosecutor who's got pressure from the commissioner court, from the sheriff's office, and from the police department to make money because the county's in debt, and you go before the judge, right? The judge is going to feel obligated politically to find in their favor, or and even if the jury, they're going to see this out-of-town person, they're not going to know who this is. They're going to know who that DA is, though. So it's not just a judge. I'm saying juries, anybody is going to feel some sort of obligation by affiliation to the government, and when that happens, right, it almost puts a person in a hopeless position, and they have nothing else. They have nothing else other than this person has a lot of cash. So then the person has to go hire a lawyer. Of course, the money's probably not enough to do that. And then how are you going to use that money when the government's taking it and they've sequestered it, and you can't use that money to hire your lawyer?
How do you fix this? Because in America here, we're free. If somebody wants to have a lowrider, they can. If they want to wear their pants down to their knees, they can. If they want to wear their hat to the side, they can. If they want gold or silver trim, like I said, on their cars, they can do it, even though that applies in a lot of people's minds, maybe in a certain part of town, drugs or whatever is going on. And it may not be the case at all. Maybe that's just their way of expression. So how do you get around all this and still live your freedom of lifestyle?
I mean, I think that a lot of it is evolved, like I spoke about when I was speaking with Mr. Grisham and you at the a lot of this plays into that. I mean, we've kind of got a systemic bias. A lot of times we've gone from almost solid conclusive probable cause to now all you need is some kind of sufficient evidence to establish a fair probability, and the police officer is justified. And as I talked about, I feel like a lot of the restrictions that have been placed on the Fourth Amendment now have rendered it useless, but also cause a lot of these tensions, police-citizen tensions that we see. I think if we went back to keeping police right more on their toes, if we made the Constitution a little bit stronger, I think that a lot of times police wouldn't be so motivated to get involved where they really don't need to be involved, or to intrude farther than they needed to intrude. I've had several cases where they're asking my guy on the side of the road, where are you going? I'm going on vacation to Oklahoma to see family. Well, why are you doing that? It's none of your business. It's none of your business why I'm going on vacation. And he answers them, and then he says, well, why couldn't you just have called him? And I'm thinking, are you serious? It don't matter why he's not calling him or why he wants to go, because he wants to go.
Why are they allowing this? Look, I mean,
that case actually got thrown out, but
I'm totally law enforcement, man. Totally.
It was.
Hold on, I'm totally law enforcement, but you're right. I see these things too. So where is it coming from? Where is it coming from, and why? Is it because they, like you said, they want to stuff their coffers because they're bankrupt and they need to?
Well, obviously those few examples, I think that they were. I'm not saying that all counties in Texas do that by any means, but I'm saying there have been actual real problems with the forfeiture statute because of cases like this, and it wasn't just a couple of isolated incidents. There was several counties.
Trey, you've heard my idealism all the time, and that is respect to the officer. The officer gives respect. I mean, that's just the basic common element. But for some reason, it doesn't happen a lot of the time.
Well, it's kind of hard to respect someone who's stealing from you and bullying you to do it.
Yeah, but then again, when a badge comes up to the car and the guy's being a real jerk to the officer, I don't blame the officer one bit.
Oh no, not at all.
I mean, that's why I'm saying police officer professional. He comes up in a professional manner until, for some reason, the individual doesn't respect him. And if the officer disrespects him, well, that guy's got to go and do a legal process because the last thing you want to do is something on the street. But what I was getting, I didn't mean to go on this tangent, but what I'm trying to get at is you brought up a point, and it's why are we getting this? How does this happen? How do we stop it? How do we put the brakes on it so we can just say, stop asking me why I'm going on vacation?
I mean, I think that people don't know their rights as much anymore. People don't speak out against this anymore. I think that there are a lot of more liberal folks that don't think that it's okay, for your privacy and for your liberty to be invaded, and they think, well, if you got nothing to hide, then you might as well let the police officer talk to you. And yeah, okay, that's great. But the problem is over time, we have already seen that the more we let that occur, the more is taken away from us. And eventually,
exactly the point why I don't budge on Second Amendment. You want to take away bump stocks? No, then that's just a slippery slope to something else.
Right, exactly. It's a slippery slope argument. The whole thing, and we do have a racial profiling statute, and it requires them to report every traffic stop or apply for equipment like video and audio and things like that. But none of the people or officers are ever identified. And so it's always almost impossible to try to prove that there was racial profiling, because you can't ever pull the report unless, like, every officer is brutally honest on the report, and it is clear, like, that, and you can get every report and you can afford to do that, and it's clear that everybody that's stopped is black or Mexican or some kind of scrutinized minority, then you're not going to be able to enforce that rule. And
what about the cop side of it? The cop's thinking to himself or herself, you know, there's all these people out there waiting to screw us, their nails to the wall because we made one bad decision in the course of, like, let's say their profile. Say, hey man, I know this guy's circling the building. It's criminal activity. It's suspicious activity. So I'm profiling. I do this, and just so happens the guy's black or Mexican, right? And they're going to say, oh, there you go again, doing the profiling thing. But the guy had to make a decision based on that. And now they're going, you know, we need to cover our backside because we know we're going to get hit with all this stuff from these groups that protect rights and all that. And the guy's just doing his job. So, I mean, you got this bad mixture of people afraid to do something.
my honest opinion, and it's me, and if I was a police officer, I wouldn't be worried about that, because you go look at the statistics of cases that sue police officers and fail, and it's unreasonable. I mean, it's shocking. I mean, most cases fail, and then most people aren't going to be able to afford it. Most lawyers aren't going to take it because there's not enough damages. If I was a police officer, I wouldn't be worried about getting sued. Now I'd be worried about getting shot. Getting shot is a different story. I'd be worried about getting shot at or somebody fighting me. I'd much be worried, and there may be a couple cops say, no, we have to watch our liability. Well, a lot of times the county's going to cover you. I know that maybe you may not have liability insurance. There are some that can't afford that, but most of the time they are going to be covered under some form of insurance or county money, right? And even then, right, it's so hard to launch a successful case to sue a police officer civilly. I know you see it in the news a lot, but trust me, it is difficult.
Okay, so
extremely difficult.
We're winding down out of time here. Can you give us some idea of what someone should do on the street when it comes to this topic of profiling, how one should handle it maybe? Is there any advice, anything you want to say about that?
Well, I mean, I'll just give you a case that really disappointed me. It came out Ramirez to Mayo. It was I really thought it was a good case for the defense. The Court of Appeals gave a good opinion, but then it just got reversed in September of this year. The guy was in his car, and he got stopped by a traffic violation and wouldn't roll down his window. He opened the door to talk to the police officer rolling down the window. He was wearing a lot of cologne. He was smoking inside the car, and he was driving a rental car, and he was extremely nervous. And so those facts alone, right, allowed the police officer to launch an investigation that gave rise to probable cause. And the police officer ended up being right, okay? But it doesn't matter. Those facts are so vague and so tenuous, so light, that almost any reason can subject somebody to being searched. And so I would say be respectful to the police. I would say try to cooperate as much as possible. I would say try not to be nervous, because if you're nervous, there's no reason to be nervous. If you just talk to them and go along with it and get in and get out of there, there's going to be no reason that you should be nervous.
You know what's funny? I have a very good friend up in New York where I used to live, okay? Black man, okay? And he goes, Matt, when you're driving, you do just a 1 or 2 over the speed limit. You always put your blinker on. You always do gradual lane changes, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. That, if I'm a cop, I'm going to go, going the speed limit, using the blinkers. What are they trying to hide? No matter what you do.
There was actually a case when a police officer said that they were driving too perfect.
So what happened there?
It got reversed on appeal. Okay, but it wasn't only for that. The judges were not happy with the fact that this case did not get suppressed. They wanted to get. There was more to that, but they really went after, like, you're telling me that somebody's driving too perfectly now gives rise to reasonable suspicion. Mm-hmm. And so you should see the NHTSA manual too. And there's almost any traffic violation means you're drunk.
I was driving down the road the other day, and there's a state trooper, and he's going, like, I don't know, 57 or 56, and the speed limit's 60. And people are just behind him, afraid to pass. Like, get out of my way. I'm going the speed limit. I'm not worried about it. Because if you start doing that, first of all, if I was a trooper, I'd be laughing, thinking, look what kind of control you got. And then you got all these other factors that come into play. But I'm thinking, like, hey, you can't win. Just go. If he's going 57 and the speed limit's 60, then go. Why are you so worried about it? But no matter what happens, you can get profiled, good or bad. Okay, I ran long.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, we're going to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, we got attorney extraordinaire Benton Ross Watson here. Ross, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
I'm here in Cameron, my primary office location, 105 East Main Street. That's 105 East Main here in Cameron. My phone number is 254-605-4140. That's 254-605-4140. Or you can email me at benton@watson.legal. That's benton@watson.legal. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, guys.
And again, this segment is always sponsored by Coupling of Dodd Krebs Law Firm, and we thank them very much for that.